Welcome to another episode of PS Younger Self. I'm your host, Chris, and we have a great conversation today with our guest, Tannaz Hosseinpour. She is a relationship coach, author, and also a podcast host of her podcast called Minutes on Growth. And we are going to be diving into a topic that I know will interest a lot of us, relationships, how we can nurture healthy and secure relationships. So let's dive in. Welcome, Tanaz. It's very good, nice to meet you.
Thank you, Chris. It's lovely to be on here.
So I want to start off by asking you about your journey to become a relationship coach because I read a little bit about your background and found it very interesting. And so I thought that would be a great place to kind of set the stage for the conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to become a relationship coach today?
Yeah, definitely. So, my background initially, I did my undergrad in religion and political science, and then I went into law school to do dispute resolution law. And then I love to study, so I did another management postgraduate degree, and then I decided to go into family mediation. And somewhere along the line, I decided, okay, I don't want to be sitting in a room helping people fight over who gets, the dog over the weekends or who gets that like one piece of plate, whatever it is. I really didn't like to be on the reactive side of it. And at that point, I was living in Dubai. I had started my book club, and a girl who was a member of the book club turned around and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a coach?" And I was like, "I had no idea what that is." It's like 10 years ago. It's like, I have no idea what that is. And she was like, she was a lawyer too. She had a legal background. She's like, "Why don't we do it together?" And so we started the journey together. And I realized that I really liked the area of relationships, kind of niche down on there. And I've always been, my book club was about self help and psychology. And I've been in the realm of spirituality for over 15 years, studying it and teaching it. And so it kind of really fell on my lap. And then a couple of years ago, I realized, okay, I want to be able to provide more tools and insights to my clients. And so I started my third postgraduate degree in counseling psychotherapy with a focus on relationships. So that's how the journey led me here.
Amazing. And what a diverse and a natural progression to where you are today. Curious, is when you were doing family mediation and working with this other partner who was in, you said law as well, what
Mhm.
did you find to be those common reasons across these relationships, dynamics that brought people to the stage of seeking professional dispute, like mediation? I mean, because at that point, like it must be pretty, heavy, but even before people seek out professional help, I mean, I've been there. I know my friends have been there. They struggle internally of, either miscommunication or not. So, what are some of the common things that you've seen?
Mm, well, research by the Gottman Institute actually shows us that the number one reason people fight is actually over nothing. It is, and that's their own wording. It is this. It's not necessarily what they're fighting about, but it's rather how they're fighting. And so these ruptures, these microaggressions, create ruptures in the relationship to a point where now there's resentment, there's contemptful behavior, and it's their attitude towards it and the lack of repair that actually gets them to a point that where they're like, I just can't do this anymore. Because again, research shows us that there's only three mm, deal breakers when it comes to relationships that can't be resolved, and they shouldn't be resolved. The first is abuse. The second is if the parties don't have different belief systems around wanting children versus not wanting children. And the third is when one member has an addiction and is refusing to seek support and help for it. So, besides these three, all other problems can be resolved. But if we're not seeking professional help on how to resolve them, then resentment grows.
Mm, yeah. No, I love what you said about it's not so much that. fighting doesn't exist in a healthy relationship, but it's how you repair. I've definitely heard that before. So then what are some of those tools to either repair? Because we've definitely heard also, it's very common, and I've definitely have been practicing it across my relationship dynamics about having good, solid, and open communication between the two parties. But is there more to that? I know there's a lot of nuance, but are there any other key elements and tools that you would say and how we can repair, but also have a strong, healthy, nurturing, and secure relationship?
Yeah, I love that you asked that. And of course, there's so many elements that go into healthy communication styles. But the first is to listen to understand and not listen to respond. Oftentimes, I notice with my own couples that I work with, they completely convert the therapy room or the counseling, the coaching room into um, a courtroom, and they're trying to win their point. They're trying to, it's not about who, it's not about a win-win situation. It's I want to win and I want to prove that you're wrong. And so we are listening to the other person, but we're not understanding them. We're just listening and we're kind of preparing the response in our head. Oh, I can't wait for them to finish and I'm going to say this, this, this. So, so the first is really listening to understand, listening to feel. And I tell couples all the time, you can understand someone and not agree with them. It's okay. It's okay to not agree with them. Sometimes we think if we say, "Oh, it's valid what you're saying," I'm agreeing with it. No, I can understand what you're saying, and I can also agree to disagree, but I can still validate your perspective. And the magic words are, "I understand what you're saying is valid. I feel you, I see you, I hear you." It's like pouring water over fire. It really helps people regulate when they're arguing. So I think the main one I would say is listen to understand, not listen to respond.
Oh, that is so, so good. And it resonates so much with me. And as you saw, I was like nodding because I truly believe that too. And I've also recently experienced it. I would love to share a story. But before that, do you think you can understand without you can understand someone without hearing them or seeing them? Or like, are they all different? Because, or can you hear someone? Can you make someone feel heard and seen without truly understanding them? Because I know you said earlier the way you can understand, and there's these magic words by saying, I hear you, I see you, and I validate you. And those words have definitely helped me as well too on the receiving end. But can you truly hear someone and feel someone, but not understand them, as in they understand their perspective, but may understand that you might be feeling a little upset right now? Is my
Mhm.
question clear to you?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. So I would respond to it in two parts. The first is this understanding between people that multiple realities can coexist, meaning my
Yeah.
perspective can coexist with your perspective, and they can be conflicting perspectives, but there is enough space for both of these realities to have a space to be explored, to be discussed, um, to be honored and respected. So that's the first one. These multiple realities can coexist. And the second
Mhm.
part is yes, if we can practice the art, I would say, of curiosity. And sometimes people
Oh,
think empathy is like I feel what you're saying, but no, empathy is I'm giving you the space to tell me more about your experience. So just the
yeah.
question of tell me more. I'd love to know what that feels like. I'd love to know what that how that's sitting with you. And just the moment we're curious with someone's internal world, even
Mhm.
if we don't understand it, they feel understood.
Ah, that was so beautiful, and that spoke so well to exactly the story I wanted to share. And I know we were gonna transition from romantic to friendships later, but if you don't mind, very organically, my story ties into a friendship dynamic here. And I wish I had your words in me while I was communicating with my friend at the time in the point of tension, but I give both of us a lot of credit in repairing this tension because we both have a lot of love and care for a relationship and interest to maintain our very, very strong friendship. I mean, she's an incredible friend. Anyway, so our story, the story more ties into I felt like I was not being heard. And instead, it was more just repeating in the beginning, I hear you, but this is my opinion, this is etc. And I have a right to my opinion. And at the time when we were both activated, it was very hard for each other to actually hear or understand or see each other. And later, after some period of pause, like actually I had to ask, can we please table this conversation when both of us are in a better state? And the later conversation, I tried to explain to her, and you said the word empathy, that even though you kept telling me, I hear you, it always followed with, but this is my opinion and I have a right to my opinion. I truly didn't feel heard because there wasn't any empathy. And I love that word you said, the art of curiosity of why the other person, why I, the friend, may be feeling this way. And when I was able to articulate without using the word curiosity, I love that word. Um, she was able to finally see that, "Oh, I get it. I had to give some examples without getting too much into detail. Like, what if I said this to you, etc., and without any the desire to understand why you may be feeling this way." And it clicked, and we were able to finally really hear each other. She's like, and then finally at the end, we're like, at that moment, it's like, I get it. I get you. And I was like, you go. And it was such a beautiful moment for us. And it actually made us both feel that we were able to not only hear each other, but deepen our friendship that we both really honor. So thank you for articulating that, like the art of curiosity. Why is that? So you tapped on like that helps to get into the state of empathy. Can you elaborate a little bit more? Because I think that is such a beautiful space for us to really kind of understand why it's so essential.
Yeah, definitely. So, um, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And before I answer your question, I just want, because you touched on something so powerful. You said only after we were able to pause and take a break could we have this conversation. And I think that is the ultimate, most important element in communication is communicating when both parties are in a regulated have a regulated nervous system. They're both feeling grounded. The moment one party is dysregulated, they cannot process the information that is coming and they'll get more defensive, and the other party will feel more dismissed and unheard. So I love that. And I just wanted to highlight that of importance of taking pauses throughout conversations, especially when they get heated. And again, science shows us that when we are physiologically flooded and we're dysregulated in that moment, our bodies need a minimum of 20 minutes to regulate, minimum. So nothing before
Oh,
that allows us to process any new information.
wow. Okay. Wait. So that's interesting. I didn't know that specifics about we need 20 minutes. So let's say if you were in a romantic relationship situation and we're both dysregulated and the other person is maybe more logical, can we say like, can we give each other 20 minutes? I mean, what are some ways with my friend, I had to ask like, can we please table this? But are there other ways that we can invite the other person? Let's pause so that they can see it as a good tool rather than like we're dismissing this. I don't want to talk about it. Let's brush it under the rug.
Yeah, definitely. Another good question. So this is two elements we need to take into consideration. The first one
Okay.
is couples need to have a signal, a timeout signal. Some couples, when they become so dysregulated, they want to talk but they can't. It's like the words aren't coming out. So I really recommend for them to have a hand signal, whether it's a T or an X. But that becomes like in that moment they both agree. It's an agreement, a relational agreement between them that the conversation takes a break because anything after this point might become damaging to the relationship and cause more ruptures. So having that timeout signal or just having a word. I have couples that use like apples. They throw it out and the moment an apple comes out, it means that's it. We're done. But
Really?
yeah, it's so good. It's so powerful, so simple, but so powerful. But the second part of this is we need to be very clear and transparent about when we're coming back to this conversation. Because
Mm,
if the other party, and we hear a lot about attachment theory on social media, if the other party has an anxious attachment style, and I just went and said X, without telling them, hey, let's talk about this tomorrow at lunch or tonight at dinner or in 30 minutes, they're going to feel really anxious. And co-regulation is so powerful in relationship. It fosters trust, it fosters connection. So I'm taking a break, yes, but I'm also letting you know that I will come back to this conversation. Now, whatever that agreed time is between both parties.
oh, so good. And I raised my hand because I'm anxiously attached, trying and working on being secure. So right, if my partner just said like later, it's that for me, it's the uncertainty. Like
Mhm.
when? Like this could never happen, or the waiting time could be so painful. And oh my God, the body language like signal and these words so brilliant, and it made me think it's probably wiser to have these agreements or rules or whatever you may call it before. Like you
Mhm.
can't think of that in the middle of in the middle of the tension, right, Tanas?
Yeah,
Like, wait a
definitely.
second, just throw in the word apple. Like, will that work right now?
Yeah, there has to be meaning to those words. And so couples who go to couples therapy before they have to go to couples therapy tend to do better because it's in these sessions that they come up with these agreements. Or even if they
Mm,
don't, go to a therapist or to a coach, but just kind of sitting at home reading these self-help books. There's, all of these most relational concepts that we share are by the Gottman Institute, and they have a plethora of content out there. So just sitting with these contents and creating these relational agreements between themselves really is the best proactive task that you can take on as a couple.
mhm. It would work if both parties are curious and want to.
Yeah.
What if the partner is resistant? Or let's say, like I am the one that's like diving into personal health, but the partner is doesn't really take that seriously. It's not really dismissive, but it's like, oh, they're very logical maybe, or they don't have that interest. Are there ways that like we can help our partners, not plurals, the partner, yeah, kind of ease into it and be curious. Maybe that's another way to even like explore it so that setting agreements or rules or these other things in place will become easier without resistance.
Hmm. Definitely. And this happens often of one party might be more involved in personal development and self-help, more interested, more invested. Multiple answers. The first is, of course, similar to how children don't like to be told what to do, but they will copy what you do. It's embodying that within ourselves and setting those bounds. Um, you know, for example, if you're in an argument with your partner and your partner gets heated in the moment, and you say, I really want to hear you out, but if you continue to scream, I have to remove myself from the conversation. The first time they're going to throw a tantrum. The second time they're going to throw a tantrum. The third time they're going to realize, I need to lower my voice if I want this conversation to continue. So it's like, first of all, setting boundaries for yourself on what you will and will not accept will kind of create space for change to happen without having to dictate it to the other person. Usually, when we dictate something to the other person, they get defensive because they start to think that you're criticizing me. Am I not good enough? And just it's like so many, it's a domino effect. So it's embodying it first within ourselves, that which we want to see our partner to do, and kind of showing it in action. I have couples where one party starts working with me, and at first the other partner is like, no, I don't want this. Like, I don't want to be involved. I have it figured out. And then after a couple of months, he's like, oh, I realized that, we're fighting less and we're connecting more. And they get curious based on the changes that they see. So really just giving time and space for people to see the change first within you. I would say that's a major one. And then it, in general, it's, can I, when people feel seen and accepted as they are, they're more likely to want to grow and evolve. And it might sound counterintuitive, but that's how it is. Because if I feel judged for who I am, either I'm going to cling to that identity out of defensiveness, or I'm going to go into the state of I am not enough. And I actually go deeper into it. So it backfires in some way. But if I can see you and I can accept you as you are, and Sophia Bush has a beautiful quote on this, we are works in progress and masterpieces at the same time. If we can accept that about ourselves and about our partner, more likelihood for growth as a couple to happen. Oh, and lastly, and I would say this, is shared dreams. Is okay, can we sit down and ask each other, like, what are your dreams? What are your individual dreams? What are our dreams as a couple together? And through allowing that energy of that dream to pull us instead of us chasing it. So everything we're doing now as a dynamic duo is working towards that. And that dream is so powerful. It's pulling us up together. And that's where teamwork comes into.
Well, that's beautiful. I was repeating that in my head. The energy of our dream to pull us rather than the individual dream or something. And that is really powerful. And I feel like these are things again that we you can with your partner put into practice either early on or ongoing, right? Like it's probably good to revisit these because not only do we get into a rut of being in routine and it's natural to forget things and things change as we are evolving. So it would be good to have this kind of as a regular practice, right? If so, what are practical ways that we can put it into practice? Is it by saying, can we put, a day in the week or a day in the month where we sit and talk together about our relationship dream? Or do we, oh my God, one of my dear friends, he's my close male friend who I think is super wise, and I actually tell him he needs to be a relationship coach. He put into practice with his former partner journaling together about their relationship.
Yeah, that's so powerful. That's
So
so good.
our so powerful, right? Like it was a living, breathing document that they both wrote in. He didn't use the word dream, but it feels like, to your point, like this is our dream we're keeping alive and learning about and nurturing. Yeah, what are ways that couples can put this into practice very practically?
Yeah, definitely. So again, there's this concept by the Gottman Institute called the State of the Union. And what it is you kind of set aside either an hour a week, or if you don't have the time, an hour every 2 weeks or an hour a month. And what happens during these meetings is you it's like an allocated time for you both to grow the relationship through being curious with each other's internal worlds. And we start this meeting by noticing and mentioning the positive in the other person. So we don't start off, with criticism or complaints. We start off with, what is going well in the relationship? What do you acknowledge and notice good in the other partner? Hey, like when you helped me pack the kids' lunch yesterday, I felt so taken care of. Or when you brought me coffee without me having to ask, I felt so seen. So kind of really complimenting each other on what is working. And then we go into, okay, what isn't working? So what do we need to work on? And lastly, it's how can I support you? How can I be a better partner for you this coming week? If they have a project, how can I be of support? How can I be of guidance? So it's really like we're sitting down. It's like a business. It's like a meeting where we're sitting down. What is working? What isn't working? What do we need to do better? And what good can we amplify? And so these State of the Union meetings, if we can schedule them into our calendars, and just know that, okay, like the first Monday of the month is when me and my husband, we put our phones aside. The kids are, if there are kids, the kids are asleep, and we are just diving into the relationship. And it's time for the we-ness. And couples who focus on the word we tend to do much better than couples who focus on the word me. So the togetherness, the time for that togetherness becomes sacred.
Yeah. No, when you said set aside a meeting like a business, I mean, is it just me, but, or do other people to actually have a little resistance to that? Because I'm like, well, maybe for me, I'll speak for myself. I'm a hopeless romantic. And I think my romantic relationships, like, it shouldn't be like a business. It shouldn't, like, we shouldn't, I mean, I get it. Like when my friend was telling me about even his journaling practice, but maybe it's about a reframe. Like you don't have to think like it's a business, or is it okay to think of it like a business, setting up these systems or these practices? It's okay, and like, and maybe because of the movies that we watch in Hollywood and these TV shows, relationships are so romanticized that like, oh, my husband, partner, etc. If he really loves me, he should be able to read my mind. If he really loves me, like I shouldn't have to set aside time for us to have these practices. Is that part of it? Like
Um, I love that you brought that up of like how movies have romanticized it, and that's what I wanted actually to discuss initially when we were going to talk about the intimacy tanks. And so, you know, you can word it however you want, but it only works if you put in the work. And why? Because everyone wants to feel seen, heard, valued, and appreciated. And that requires effort. That requires consistent effort. Love is not enough. Love, in my opinion, is the cherry on top. The foundation of a relationship is respect, is transparency, is trust, is reliability, it's responsiveness. So it's like the cake, that's the foundation of the cake. And all of this requires effort. They don't just magically happen. And you know, we are traditionally tribal people. We thrive in supportive communities. And back in the day, we would all live in the same community and we had our family nearby, we had our friends, we had our cousins. And it was a close knit, supportive community for us. Now, due to globalization and people are living in different areas from their family of origins, from their communities, they're so isolated. And Hollywood has come in, Disney has come in and said, okay, in your isolated state, your partner is your everything. There's this one person who comes in and they become everything for you. And, I think our generation is the only generation that has unprecedented levels of expectations from their partner. I want you to be my best friend, to be my lover, to be my partner, to be everything. And you need to know how to be everything without me even having to say it because Disney said so, or because, all these rom-coms said so. And that puts a lot of pressure on couples. And that actually becomes one of the reasons that couples break up, is because it's exhausting being everything for someone all the time. And so imagine how the other person feels. And and that's where the intimacy tanks come in.
Mhm.
But to answer your question, um,
Let's go to,
yeah,
yeah. No, that was a great answer, and it reminds me of like my favorite quote. I don't know if it's Esther Perel's quote, but like to me, Esther Perel is just like goddess space. I remember when I first heard, she's like, yes, today, like we want our partner to be everything that a community used to be back in the day, etc. So I hear you. So let's tap into the intimacy tanks. Never heard that phrase before. I think I understand what it means. So please help us understand, what are these intimacy tanks?
yeah,
Why
definitely.
it's so essential?
And it ties into adult friendships too. So intimacy things, when I usually tell people, what do you think what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say intimacy? And they usually think sexual intimacy. And so what intimacy is actually broken down into six different subcategories. And I say, like, visualize yourself as a car with like six fuel tanks, and they all need to be filled for us to feel a sense of um, inner peace, contentment, fulfillment. And so, what are these six tanks? The first one is sexual intimacy. So, it's any sexual touch, um, the traditional intimacy description that we have. The second is physical intimacy, and physical intimacy is non sexual touch. So it could be holding hands, it could be hugging someone, a kiss on the cheek, cuddling. The third is emotional intimacy. It's the people you feel safe with to look into your internal world, to feel your feelings, to be aware of your feelings, that you feel safe, they're non-judgmental, so you can express your emotions with them. The fourth is intellectual intimacy. These are people who stimulate you intellectually. You can have conversations about anything and everything with, and it's just this intellectually stimulating conversation. The next is spiritual intimacy, people that you can connect with talking about the divine. It could be meditation, yoga, could even be religion, going to church, to the synagogue, to mosque, any religious, non-religious, spiritual. And lastly is experiential intimacy. And experiential intimacy is people you can have experiences with. You can go to the movies, check out new restaurants, travel with, go to workshops, take classes. And so we have these six tanks with, let's say, within our body. And now we're at a period that, because we're separated, we're isolated from our community, we expect our partner to fulfill all of these tanks. And it's a lot to ask because people go through their own challenges. There will be periods of disconnection in a relationship that have nothing to do with the two partners and everything to do with external stressors. And so a partner might not have the capacity or the capability to fill some of those tanks for you. And so here is when we lean into adult friendships. Who can fill which tank for me? And in a relationship, what I like to do is I like to ask couples, which one is a non-negotiable for you that your partner has to fill? And so monogamous relationships might say sexual, non-monogamous relationships might not have that as a priority. But I'll say pick 3 to 4 that you want to receive from your partner, and then who else can fill the other tanks for you? Even the non-negotiables, is there someone else? So for example, for me, for emotional, I have like two of my really good sisters, I would call them. I have my fiance, I have my mom. So it's like, okay, if my fiance doesn't have the capacity for it, that's fine. I can fill the tank by someone else. And So it's becoming very intentional with the people who are in our lives. Which tank are they filling? And it kind of takes the pressure also of our friends to be everything for us too, because sometimes we think the friend that we travel with has to be the friend that we have the intellectual conversations with, has to be the friend that we meditate with, has to be the friend, you know, too much pressure. We need to remove some of this pressure.
Mm. That's a good point too with friends. I was nodding because I've been in that situation where I realized I was putting a lot of pressure on friends, and this is an area that I'm really passionate about putting all the expectations on them versus standards. But won't go to digress into that. But that so true that when you have these expectations and of one person, even in a friend, filling all of these intimacy tanks, it does put a lot of pressure. And so can it even, and I like what you said about just being really intentional and identifying like who we want, or who we think can fill those air intimacy tanks for us. But can they kind of mm, change from time to time, like in the intellectual side, like, oh, I would love to have intellectual intimacy with my partner, but because like you said, there sometimes my friend can fill it too. Like these can change from time to time, right? Like we don't always have to say like this person needs to always fill it for me.
Yeah, definitely. We really flexibility is one of the traits that allows us to cultivate healthy relationships with ourselves and with other as we extend grace to ourselves and to others. For example, one of my sisters, uh, she was always the one who filled. She was like a constant in my experiential. But then she got married, and and then you have kids, and kind of your priorities shift, and your time, like your calendar and your lifestyle changes, and that's okay. And she can stop filling that tank, and she'll fill another tank, and vice versa. My capacity, my capabilities, my time schedule. We're adults. It's can we be flexible? Can we be understanding? But can we also that doesn't excuse us from not putting in the effort, right? And that's one of the pillars of a friendship
Mhm.
is do I feel that this person is reciprocating effort? Now, here is sometimes people get stuck on this is I called you once, why didn't you call me back? Like once as well. People know their capacities. Everyone knows themselves, like they are their best identifier of what their capacity is. So I know for me personally, my dynamics, I love to give. So I'm comfortable giving to a 70-30 percentage, giving 70, receiving 30. But I also know if that 70 reaches an 80, I'm going to start to grow resentment towards that other person. So I know that I have to cut myself off after the 70 if it's not being reciprocated and kind of sit down and have that conversation with that friend. So it's knowing your capacity, communicating that, but also knowing that, it doesn't have to be tit for tat, 50-50. Sometimes life throws a curveball and we can't put in as much effort, but there still has to be some effort for that scale of reciprocity to be activated.
That's beautiful. And you mentioned fiance. You have a fiance.
Yeah, Beyonce.
Okay. Are there ways, can you give us examples where you guys practice filling each other's tanks? And I ask because I think these examples can be helpful for us to get ideas for, because again, like we talked about in terms of like examples that we typically see in movies and television or these grand gestures. And I think it's something that you've talked about when I was reading through and watching a lot of your content on Instagram, that sometimes the small gestures, at least for me personally, the small gestures like are much more meaningful than these grand ones. So can you share some examples, maybe in each of the categories, of how you practice or other couples can practice filling each other's tanks?
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely agree with you. It's the accumulation of the small gestures that actually have the most power and impact in a relationship. Similarly, it's accumulation of the small microaggressions that cause the biggest ruptures. So, some examples I would say, for example, for emotional intimacy, what really works for us, and it's been very powerful, is when I'm venting, the first question is, do you want me to listen or do you want me to provide a solution? And something as simple as that can be so profound. Sometimes, most of the time, I'm venting for the sake of venting. I don't want a solution. I just want you to listen. So that creates safety. That creates like I'm getting my needs met, and we're very clear on what the expectation of this conversation is. And it fosters more emotional trust. So emotional intimacy, that can really be powerful. Um, I'm not understanding what you're saying. Can you tell me a little bit more? Another great one of if it doesn't make sense, don't go, that makes no sense. You're overreacting. Instead of saying that, just say like, can you tell me a little bit more? I'm not really understanding. Big one. That's a
Because
big
it puts it would automatically put the other person on the defense. So it's like I'm doing something wrong.
yeah.
The verse to like, maybe I'm not understanding you.
Yeah. So just these simple sentences really can foster emotional intimacy. In terms of intellectual, personally in our relationship, my partner was not my go-to person for intellectual intimacy at the beginning. I have a book club. I love to read, and that my girls in my book club are my source of intellectual intimacy. However, as time goes by, and I've known my partner for over 16, 17 years now, um, that shifts. And we start to discover new topics that are shared topics. And so my self-help world, my manifestation world, that still remains my world. But now we've created new areas of interest for both of us that become an area that we can both share, that is of interest to both of us. So that's another thing that I would tell couples. It's okay if you have different interests. Can you find one thing that you share interest in, that you are alike in, that you like to learn more about together? So that could be intellectual. For spiritual, again, it really depends. Do both parties have shared beliefs? If not, can I be open and respectful to hearing about yours and you not pushing it on me? And that's the case in our relationship. I'm constantly saying, thank God, comes from the light, comes from the creator. My partner, not so much. But after all these years together, he'll suddenly say something like, oh, I guess it was the light that helped us in this situation, or I guess it was the creator. You kind of do influence one another, but it's also a category that to each their own. If it's shared, great. If not, it's okay. Um, and experiential, one thing that I love is free date nights. So coming up with creative ways to have date night that doesn't cost anything. And this gets couples into such a creative mode because now they have to figure out, oh, like maybe we'll pack a picnic or maybe we'll play bingo, or they step away from their phones. They step away and they start to work as a team, which is great. It's a great
I
trait to
love
have
that.
later on when conflict arises. So it doesn't have to be these grand gestures of, oh, we need to travel together. It could be simply of like, free date nights or rituals of connection. Maybe after we eat dinner, I wash the dishes, you put the food away. That could be an experiential intimacy, something that they're experiencing together in their home because it's a routine, a ritual that they've created for their home. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it is. And that's such a great example too about like it doesn't yes, it doesn't have to be like something expensive like traveling, it can be something inexpensive, but even like I love the ritual thing too because it doesn't even have to be like a new activity, but a beautiful like routine and ritual. And and I love the ritual aspect because there's something sacred about it, you know? And it's a very intimate kind of like sacred experience, and that's really beautiful. I wanted to ask you one thing in relation to kind of these intimacy takes and friendships, because it's something that I am personally having to kind of experience, as in like navigating, and it relates to like what you were saying, how, you know, even with friendships, it's healthier not to expect one friend to fill, but even many of them. And so what I'm trying to get at is, I realize, and especially when you're talking about the experiential, is I put a lot more value in having smaller, really close friends who I know um really care about me, will be there for me. And those are like my really good friends. But then I was realizing, because of a personal experience, like, huh, I was going through a really bad time. And I had mentioned it. And this friend, who I guess in my personal imagined state, like really wanted her to become like another really good friend. But she didn't really like follow up with me, like, how are you feeling? But every time we do see each other, it's it's a great, you know, conversation, etc. So what I guess I'm kind of asking is that it's okay to have those types of friends, right? And it doesn't make them a bad friend, because maybe they fit perfectly as, you know, still a good friend in the experiential side, because you guys are having great experiences together, you guys are having great conversation, but maybe she doesn't fill up the emotional intimacy tank.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
definitely.
that a healthy way to look at my friends? Because for me, I was trying to assess, like, is she not a good friend to me? Because she was not following up with me to see if I was okay, or if I was doing fine. But again, every time I see her, we have a great like experience together.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, again, there's like everything is multifaceted. One facet of it would be, have I expressed this desire to have I expressed this
Mm.
expectation to her, right? So it would mean a lot to me if you would follow up with me. You know, sometimes when I'm going through a hard time, I'll message my friends and I'll say, I'm not really in the mood to talk, but can you just check in on me every couple of days? I just send me a message. And if I don't respond, I love you, but I just need to receive that message. So it's kind of like, have you told the other friend what you need from that friendship, what you expect from that friendship? And then maybe that part friend will turn around and say, hey, like, I really don't have the emotional bandwidth, or I don't have the capacity, or don't have whatever it is, giving them space to kind of respond to that. But I'm here for you if you want to go grab a cup of coffee or watch a movie together. And because people also show um, love differently, and we've seen this in Gary Chapman's book, The Five Languages, is people perceive love differently. So your friend might perceive love through quality time. So in her mind, oh, I love Chris. I just spent like 3 hours with her at the coffee shop. She definitely is feeling like she would never suspect you not feeling seen or heard. And then you might have a friend who is like all about words of affirmation. So for her, she'd be calling you, "Hey Chris, like how are you doing? You're gonna get through this. I'm here for you." Right? And then you might have a friend who just sends you flowers because they see love through gift giving. So because people see love differently, and oftentimes we don't love people how they want to be loved, we love people how we want to be loved. And that's where the misunderstanding takes place in dynamics,
Mhm.
whether romantic or platonic. These conversations really need to take place of, hey, this is what I need from you. Can you give it to me? Yes or no? If it's a yes, great. If it's a no, can I accept you as you are? And can I be okay with you just feeling the experiential? And then that's up to you, yes or no.
That is so good and so true, because yeah, about sometimes we get caught up in giving the love the way that we want to be loved, but the way that you said that people perceive love differently. And it's again going back to like the one of the core foundation of communication, like you said, are you even communicating? Are you even expressing your need? And I know, especially in attachment theory, there's a lot of discussion about the importance of expressing your need, but this point on friendships even illustrates the power in expressing your need with your friends as well too, just like a romantic partner, because they are just a human as well, and you're having a relationship with them on so many different levels. And to cultivate such a deep friendship, or a valuable friendship that fills different areas of your intimacy, takes to express your need. And I think like that really plays on a lot of kind of tools that one could work on too. Like, how can you express, like, and that's why one of my really dear friends that I mentioned in my earlier example about how we work through helping each other feel seen and heard, she and I give her like so much credit, and why I love even exploring our friendship, because she's so deep into self-growth as well too, and has studied a lot of this. And I realized, so, and this taps into kind of like safety that you mentioned, was such a important and essential part of a relationship, to feel safety. But when I felt like I didn't feel heard, I drew a boundary with her. And I said, I would like to not discuss this anymore, about this topic with you anymore. And at the time, because she's a good friend and she respects boundaries, she's like, I respect you. But I want to share with you something, Tannaz. To me, again, it's such a beautiful trait from her. I respect the fact that you don't want to talk about this with me anymore, but I would still like to be a supportive friend. So how can I still support you? And you have no, like, I mean, I'm sure you know because the work you do, but when she said those words to me, I respect your boundary, but I still want to support you. How can I? They were just like words to my heart, Tanaz. And I feel like, and I want to share this because hopefully other people can hear, like, when you can express that, even with, let's say, a friend is drawing a boundary with you, and it's not that they you know don't ever want to talk to you, but maybe that it's just a hard time with them. But if you still show them that, like, okay, how can I still support you, it's such a touching and a beautiful way to connect with someone you care about.
I love that. And I love that she shared that with you. And how can I best support you? Um, how can I help you feel loved? How can I help you feel supported? These are such powerful statements. Inject them into any relationship, and it will enhance the safety, the trust, the connection. And, again, it's that curiosity. Show me your internal state. Teach me how to
Mm.
love you. Teach me how to be a good friend. Um, Teach me what you will accept and you won't accept. You teach me. You are the expert. No, everyone, even in therapy, it's the client is always the expert. So let the expert lead you to their heart, both ways.
You're right. Those words are a place from curiosity. I love that. Wow, it's already been almost an hour, and that really, I think, speaks to such a great conversation that we had, Tanaz. This has been such a insightful and deep conversation. I really do appreciate your insights. But before you leave, you have to tell my audience where they can connect with you to learn more from you. I know you're on Instagram. That's where I consumed a lot of your great content, but please tell us where they can all connect with you further.
Well, first off, thank you for asking such insightful and reflective questions that kind of sparked this conversation. I know the first half, it was so organic, and we'd initially wanted to talk just about the intimacy tank. So thank you
Yeah.
for asking the right questions and creating space for us to talk about these really important topics that, we really weren't taught in school, and makes the world of a difference when we know better, we can do better. So thank you for that. And in terms of connecting with me, I'm Minutes on Growth, so minutes and then ON growth on all platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. My website is the same. And I also have a free resource on my website that you can download 11 tools for self regulation, nervous system regulation. And I think it's such a powerful resource of just kind of having it on hand when you are feeling triggered, whether it's in a conversation with a friend, with your partner, or just life, life challenges show up, just kind of picking a tool and practicing it because life becomes much more graceful when we operate from a regulated nervous system. So everything becomes, better. Friendships become better. Relationships become better when we're operating from that state. So definitely download that and try out the tools. And I hope the content serves your audience.
Incredible. Thank you, Tanaz. I really appreciate you and our conversation.
Thank you, Chris.